Hey there. I'm looking at Saturday, 15th of August, 2026, to give you a bit of a heads up as to what kind of planetary picture is emerging for that day. Boy, what a week it's been. Look at all the different things we've had, all these planet to planet aspects. Mercury going into Leo, Mars going into Cancer, then the total solar eclipse, also Pluto going out of bounds. I mean, my goodness, it's really been quite a week. On Saturday the 15th, we've got Mercury making that final conjunction with Jupiter. We've got Moon going into Libra, and then we've got 6 different moon aspects. And, I think they're really going to shape the day for sure, because the moon aspects, they tend to move things along with a little bit more speed, especially dependent on what kind of aspects we've got. Now, what we do have is the moon in a square to Mars, the moon in a trine to Pluto, an opposition to Neptune, and a trine to Uranus. So that moon is going to be working with many of the big pieces of the puzzle right now that are in the is it a boat? Is it a basket? Is it now a pair of granny knickers? Do you know what? I don't even know what it is. But look at these lovely shapes that we've got on this chart. Isn't it rather incredible? So where I really want to start this is, of course, I want to start this with the Mercury and Jupiter conjunction, because in many respects, Mercury and Jupiter are in oppositions, or they're sort of opposing each other, even though they do have some very obvious similarities. Jupiter's a very, very social planet. Mercury's a very social planet. Mercury loves to move around. Jupiter loves to travel around. So they're sort of into all sorts of different things. They're both very curious planets. And so you might think, well, why are they in opposition? But according to the rulerships and planetary dignities, Mercury is the ruler of Gemini and also the ruler of Virgo. And then you've got Jupiter ruling the sign of Sagittarius and then also Pisces. So Jupiter's in opposition to Mercury, Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. So we've got Jupiter and Mercury. And then you've got Mercury down here, like a Mercury ruled sign opposite a Jupiter ruled sign. So that's why they seem in oppositions. But essentially, I think they do deal with very similar things. So Mercury is all about sort of the black and white knowledge that Gemini is really seeking, and is kind of very local, moving around. It's a lot of information being shared amongst lots of people, whereas Jupiter kind of supersizes everything. And so we might be asking ourselves much bigger questions in the sign of Sagittarius. That's why Sagittarius is not so much into the black and white facts of Gemini, but is very much into the context and the truth. And similarly between Virgo and also Pisces, I think there's something really about the story that we're creating. In Virgo, there's a lot of busyness, there's a lot of doing, there's a lot of technical expertise. There's like this sort of nitty gritty skill base that I think Mercury really lends itself to. And, in terms of the story, by the time Jupiter gets into the sign of Pisces, it's like, do you know what? We've been busy all day. Let's just put our feet up a little bit and let's drift off. And so they're really functioning on different things. But I would say, between Virgo and Pisces, there's the matter of awareness. Where is your awareness? Is it outside of your body, or is it inside and actually going outside through the inside, like in the way that Pisces is quite meditative and then eventually drifts off. So, Mercury and Jupiter, I think, are actually an interesting pairing. Now, like Mercury is about communication and Jupiter makes it bigger. Jupiter is amplifying things. And so I would say, first of all, this is a time of the big voice, especially in the sign of Leo. If you think of the energy of Leo, Leo is all about emitting, shining, being central. Like Leo is, the king of the jungle, and Leo is known for being quite regal. I mean, Leo loves itself, and Leo can be accused of having a bit of pomp and rigor about itself, or as one of my uncles said, it's full of piss and importance, which I quite like, actually. I think that was good. That's always stuck with me from childhood. They're full of piss and importance. So anyway, Jupiter and Mercury here, when they come into that conjunction on Saturday, they are absolutely giving you a big voice, or giving everyone a big voice. And this moment to become full of piss and importance in your own right. And of course, a lot of that will depend on which house that's occupying in your birth chart. But as a general influence, you might find that over the weekend, people get louder. They want to talk a lot more. They want to connect a lot more. They want to share a lot more. Both Mercury and Jupiter are really good at sharing things. So I think it could be a really, really social weekend, one where there's lots of discussions that go from facts to context and then back to facts. I think things could be very, very lively. Now, I like to always keep, I like to look out. Again, this is very Jupiter, and then kind of look back to where we are as people. So, in the world, I really wouldn't be at all surprised if there are lots of sudden new bits of information that just seem to spread through the world, like, whew, there it is, because I think Mercury and Jupiter are going to be really working it on the socials, really working social media. So it really wouldn't surprise me if they just go crazy. Now, they are technically just hanging in there in an opposition to Pluto. So that actually, I think, makes Jupiter and Mercury even more gobby than they might usually be when they come together in opposition to Pluto, because the more they're sensing control from Pluto in Aquarius, the more they're expecting censorship or social shame or pressure, social pressure from Pluto in Aquarius, the more they're likely to act up, because Jupiter absolutely encourages Mercury, and then Mercury is mercurial, is quite sometimes likes to have a little bit of fun, and Mercury also eggs on Jupiter, and Jupiter doesn't need any encouragement. So these two energies coming together could also be like the village idiot, the jester at court. This is the sort of playful foolishness. Sense of humor is going to be off the scale at this time. And speaking of sense of humor, I just really wanted to get another sense of how these two planets to work together. I don't have them connecting in my own chart. And so interestingly, Kevin Hart, the sort of outrageous storytelling comedian from the States, he is actually born with Mercury and Jupiter in a conjunction in the sign of Leo, no less. Hence why he's able to, he can think on his feet, he can hold court, he can tell really funny stories and engage people, and they can go wild. They can absolutely become something much bigger than he was expecting and that everybody was expecting. So he can really step into that leadership. Now, by contrast, there's Carl Sagan. Now, his Mercury and Jupiter isn't in the sign of Leo. His fall in the sign of Scorpio. Now, he's made the universe more easy to understand. And if you think of the universe, it's the big mystery, isn't it? And so he has applied himself to the big mystery of the world, like to find out the facts and then try to get the context of it. And so you can see how this might work with you. So my question really is, what are you willing to explore? And also, what are you willing to believe in enough that you can make it bigger? Now, the reason I said believe in is because Jupiter absolutely rules beliefs. And Mercury is about your thinking. Mercury has quite a lot of willing, definitely wants to share things. And so I'm thinking, where have you got something that you want to share? First of all, where have you got beliefs that you want to share? And if you believe in them enough, are you ready to ignite them? Are you ready to make them bigger? Because if you're holding on to something that you want to go whew, like that, like faster than the speed of light, then Saturday actually could be your day. This is a day when good messages could spread real fast. Funny messages will really spread fast, and probably very important messages and messages of disaster that might be a bit funny, or I just think information is just going to be, well, infamous. It's going to get there. So if you are familiar with astrology, it's worth considering where is like 9-10 degrees of Leo in your birth chart. So if you can identify that, it will tell you which house it's in. That might give you another clue as to what it is you might want to develop. So that's just Mercury and Jupiter. Now let's also consider that the moon is going to go into Libra a little bit later on that day. When the moon goes into Libra, that's going to make everything a lot less stressful, because the moon in Virgo is a bit on a purpose. It wants to achieve things. It wants to get things done. It wants to be of service, whereas the moon in Libra is much more about connecting with people and hearing people, really listening to people, and being in that flow of conversation. So I think like the later it gets in the day, the more social you might be. So I like that for the weekend. Now with the moon going into an exact square with Mars, that could raise tensions a little bit. Because the moon in a square to Mars, and I've got this in my birth chart, and maybe you do too. Let me know if you do, and let me know if what your experience is like. But the moon in a square to Mars has quite a short temper, so when something just gets out of control, it's like the composure bursts, and in that bursting can sometimes come some anger, a need to release the energy that's been stored up. It's a very sort of energetic and dynamic aspect. So can you imagine what it could be like if some really important information needs to come out, and then all of a sudden this kind of anger or this highly energized environment just shifts, and you've got this opening to kind of burst forth? I think there could be a lot of rage baiting going on this weekend, or rage messaging. I mean, I remember before I met my husband, I was single for quite a while, and like those moments where you go out and you might have a few drinks, and I remember saying to a friend, they should breathalyze you on your cell phone so you don't drink text. It's like, no, Louisa, you can't text that cute guy a message. But I think like there's going to be a sort of temperature change later on in the day on Saturday, where all of a sudden we might be getting ready to rage message somebody to sort of say, but da, 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 and you're on there, quick as you can. So it's something to watch out for. If you're feeling angry, you might want to consider who you're angry at and whether you really do want to send that, because when that moon moves out of that square with Mars, you'll probably start to feel a lot less angry. It will pass. That's the thing. However, at the same time, and this is another reason why it's worth taking a deep breath before you make that, like you hit enter on a big message that you send far and wide. And that is because the moon is also going to be in opposition to Neptune. Now, moon Neptune energies can be challenging because Neptune is a very sort of intuitive planet, but it's also a very foggy planet where we're not 100% certain if what you're seeing, like, can you believe it? Can you believe your eyes? Can you believe your ears? Did you really hear that or not? Are you reacting to something that you think is real, but actually, maybe you're a bit drunk and you're drunk texting without getting breathalyzed, so it's like, check yourself, make sure you know what's going on. And, you don't have to be drunk or stoned or whatever in an altered state to make a mistake. You might just be fired up about something and make an assumption. And in, the moment of that, tell your boss what an arsehole he is. So, just hold back maybe if you're feeling a little bit, peevish. Now, there are a couple of really good aspects. The trine to Pluto and the trine to Uranus, I think, are going to be helpful. And of course, what that means is the moon is also coming into a conjunction with Venus. So the moon is actually going to end up emphasizing this lovely, gorgeous Pluto, Uranus, Venus trine. Now, that could actually speed things up even more because there's no resistance. So you can absolutely reach somebody at a very core, intense level. You could reach somebody with technology, and the technology and the intensity can absolutely be sort of working together. So again, it's another warning that you want to use these moments to convey something that might be intense, might be helpful, might be useful, and it will be a massive thumbs up to you. But you might also find that it could go the other way. So I really think it's important to choose your state carefully on Saturday. And the later it is in the day, the more you need to just watch out for what you're sharing. Maybe sort of like do an intention check before you do it. So anyway, they're my thoughts for the end of the week. And again, just one last thing. It's been quite a strong week. Lots of ups and downs, lots of very strong energies. And I think when we do have these energies, in particular these eclipses, it raises the temperature, it raises the emotions over the course of the week. And so again, it's another another mention. It's hard to know where our baseline is at the moment. It's hard to know exactly where up is and where down is. So I think more for Saturday, it's more fun to just have these lovely conversations and decide where you're oriented or orienting to from the conversations. But if you're ready with a position and a really heartfelt belief about your position, you may well find on Saturday you're going to get a bit of a trigger, a bit of a spike. And the information is going to come tumbling out. That's the crux, I think, of Mercury and Jupiter, is information is going to flow so much faster than ever before. So anyway, I'm going to leave that there. It's a lot of potential on that day. If your business is absolutely premised on sending, sharing, and disseminating information, then Saturday's a very, very strong day. Anyway, I'm going to leave that there. Lots and lots of love to you. And I'll catch up with you real soon. Bye for now.